Davos'tan yayınlarımız devam ediyor. Bu bölümde yanımda Eurasia Grup Başkanı Bremmer var. Mr. Bremmer, thanks for joining our program. First of all, what's your evaluation about this US-Europe tension?
It's at the greatest point that we've seen in really since the beginning of the alliance. I think that there is a feeling of crisis among NATO members that President Trump is threatening the foundations of the transatlantic alliance, the most powerful in the world, and yet one that Trump sees as fully transactional.
So what do you say this crisis is heading to?
I think that at the very least there's permanent damage. You saw from Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney talking about this as a rupture point after he came to Davos from Beijing, where the Canadians, of course, are they're fully integrated with the United States, and they're now forming a strategic partnership with the Chinese. They're increasing their trade there. The EU-Mercosur deal that's happening. Increasing integration between the Europeans and the South Americans. All of that is because of Trump. Trump gets credit for that. So the question is, will Trump get credit for destroying the NATO alliance? I hope not. I think many Democrats and Republicans that are here in the congressional delegation also hope not. But ultimately, if Trump wants to destroy NATO, he can't end globalization, but he can destroy NATO. If he wants to destroy the trust that other countries have in the United States, certainly, the desire, the intention to undermine the sovereignty of a NATO member country and to refuse to negotiate security guarantees that the Americans are saying that they want with a trusted ally, a once trusted ally, President Trump is treating Denmark and the Europeans with contempt, utter contempt. The Europeans know that this is unacceptable. Some of them are prepared to stand up to him. Some of them are not. The key question is whether or not the Europeans are capable of uniting. Because if they're divided on this issue, and some are taking a quiet approach and let's calm it down, then Trump will take advantage of that.
So many say that they will be divided. Do you think this is different this time?
I think that they are still divided, but they are less divided. The question is, Italy feels very differently about the Copenhagen Greenland issue than the Germans do. The Baltic states and the Nordic states feel differently than Spain does. And ultimately, you need a strong statement from the European Union. You need a strong statement from all of the leaders that they are not going to just oppose it, but they're going to oppose it with consequences. Trump only responds if it matters. He only responds if there's a red line and he sees that you can actually do something in response. We saw that with China. Trump hit the Chinese with these major tariffs. The Chinese said, we're going to hit you back with tariffs, and we're going to stop your critical minerals. And then Trump backed down. Are the Europeans willing to do that? If the answer is no, if they can't act collectively, then Trump will continue to abuse them. That's what it is.
So what happens if NATO collapses?
The Europeans have to create their own collective defense. The Germans will become the military leader of that alliance. They will have a collective leadership, probably the Germans, the French, the Brits, that they will take. I'd suspect there'd be individuals that would take sequentially the control. I think that they would be very committed to Ukraine, and the Ukrainian military would become completely integrated with that, but it would be very different. I'm not sure that's good news for Putin long term. I'm really not, because ultimately, even though the Europeans aren't as strong collectively as the Americans are, the Europeans are a lot more strong with Ukraine than the Russians would be. They have the economy, they have the technology, and with the Ukrainians, they actually have a fighting force that's capable to fight.
So what is the place of Ukrainian-Russian war in this big Europe crisis?
Well, right now, Putin sees that there's no reason for him to engage in any negotiations because he's hoping that the transatlantic relationship falls apart, that the Americans will support him. Remember, President Trump invited Putin to join the Board of Peace literally at the same time as he was telling the Danes that he's taking Greenland, right? So that's a very, very strong message to NATO that I am going to work with this guy that we are at war with, right? That implies that the Americans are not really committed to the Ukrainians long term. At least President Trump is not. The big question is, how much damage is Trump going to do in 3 years? Because the United States is the most powerful country in the world, but Trump is not the most powerful leader. Xi Jinping is. Why is that? Well, Xi Jinping doesn't have midterm elections. Xi Jinping doesn't have an independent judiciary, right? And so ultimately, can the NATO alliance get through a relatively challenging leadership of President Trump to continue to deal with the United States that has institutions that are more resilient. And right now, today at Davos, we don't know the answer to that question.
Last question.
Yeah.
Is there a role to play for rich countries like Turkey?
Turkey continues in an environment that is a G0 world, an absence of global leadership. You see more vacuums, regional vacuums of power. Turkey obviously has become a more important player in issues like Syria, for example, on Armenia, Azerbaijan, for example. Turkey's played a role. Turkey played a role in the one success we've had in the Russia-Ukraine war, which was the Black Sea agreement that got the grain and the fertilizer out. That was Turkey playing a significant role with the United Nations. It wasn't the Americans, wasn't the Europeans, it wasn't the Chinese. So ultimately, I think geopolitically, Turkey is becoming more important, not less important in this environment.
Mr. Bremmer, thanks for making this time.
My pleasure. Good. Thank you.
Enerjisa Davos 2026'yı sundu.